I don't want to waste anyone's time. So if you are looking for an Ableton Note review, then you're not going to get it from me. Not right now, because I simply don't want to review the app, not in its current state. And if you want to know why I don't want to do that, stick around and I'll tell you exactly why. However, if you don't want to stick around, go down and check my pinned comment, because I've linked to some really good Ableton Note reviews by people who are also using Live.
We'll identify the feature like there is in live
set that
especially
with the app.
Sounds great. I love it.
Okay, so I'm gonna address why I don't want to review Note, and I want you to know that what I'm about to say, I say from the perspective of a mobile music producer, someone who mainly uses iDevices as a central brain in all of my setups. I don't want to review Note as it is right now because I want to wait and see what Ableton does with it. Right now, Note is way too limited. It does not support any of the stuff that we have become accustomed to over the years. And if there are people in the audience watching this not understanding what that might be, I have this video in where I go through the history of the development of the iOS music platform and all the technologies, where it all started even before the App Store even existed, all the way up to 2021. So if you want to see that, I've got that video popping out in the card in the upper right corner and also linked down in the pinned comment and in the description, so it's easy to find. So to clarify it quickly here, Note does not support inter-app audio, it does not support AUV3, it can't host any other apps within it, and it can't be hosted by other apps. It doesn't talk MIDI with any other apps, and when it comes to export options, you're extremely limited there too. So as the app is right now, it is not that useful for me, and so I'm not that interested, even though I've heard really good things about it. Now there is this thing that could change my mind about having a proper look at Note, and that is if Ableton adds a way of exporting stems, because then suddenly the app becomes useful to me, because this is a workflow that I've already adopted and something I adopted many years ago. I even do this with AUM. And so what I do there is I make these huge setups, I'll play around with apps and make stems basically that I then import into a sequencing DAW like Cubase, where I continue working with it. And it's not the only app I do it with. I do it with another app that still doesn't have AUE3 support but still has survived for a long time on iOS, which is Korg Gadget. So if Ableton adds stem audio export support, I will have a proper look at Note. But yeah, for now the app seems to be doing exactly what Ableton states it does, and that's just simply not enough for a lot of mobile music producers using iOS mainly, for all the previously mentioned reasons. I've been involved with mobile music making and the mobile music community for a decade now. And during that time, there's been a lot of discussion regarding the topic of desktop class software and whether that should be on iOS or not. And it is an interesting topic because there's so many things to discuss. Do we even need desktop class DAWs and stuff like that on iOS? And if we do, is it worth it for companies to even port their stuff over to iOS? And if yes, then what would the end results be? What would that look like? I of course want to hear the input from the mobile music community, but first just hear me out here. Because there is this one thing that concerns me, and it's the economy of iOS, and I don't know. In the end, this is all a numbers game too. No company wants to lose money on an endeavor that just doesn't turn to pay out in the end. How viable financially would it be for a bigger company like Ableton, for instance, to actually port their flagship product over to iOS, a much smaller niche market where every other week there is a discussion somewhere over some app costing too much because it's $20 and that it should be $5 or less. And something's gonna have to happen with the pricing structure in the future if we are expecting bigger companies to port flagship apps over to iOS. How much would you actually pay for desktop class apps on iOS? The thing is, I asked my audience about this, and here are the results. And right now I'm sure that there are people in the audience under the belief that iPads just don't have the power to run desktop class apps.
It's fiction.
Take a new iPad now with an M1 processor, for instance. It's got an 8-core CPU. It's got a large amount of RAM. You can definitely run desktop class apps on here. But with all of this said, the mobile music platform here on iOS is still a very niche market, and it's not fully developed yet. Have you ever tried using a desktop app on a 13-inch screen? Because that's the reality of taking a desktop app and just porting it right over to iOS. And the fun doesn't stop there, because it only goes down from there. Because then you have the iPad 11, and then iPad 10.5 inch, and then 9.7, and then 7.9. The minis, they're really tiny. How do you fit that desktop software on that little real estate? In fact, my previous video that I put out was all about how I had to get myself some Apple Pencils in order to be able to fully control some parameters in FabFilter's apps on iOS, because some of the controls are just too tiny. This is an actual thing, and this is just an effect app. We're not talking about a fully sized flagship DAW here. These things need to be considered, and many times it might even mean that you have to start over from scratch and make something from the ground up, something completely new. And then you might just end up designing something that fits really well on mobile. Maybe something looking like this. I'm just saying, this is an actual thing, people, and we can't just disregard it. You know, I can't stress how much I actually love the touch aspect of this platform. Some of the apps I love using the most on my iPad are apps like Sampler, TC11, Borderlands Granular, and now also Beat Surfing 2. Because these apps turn the iPad into an instrument, a touch instrument, and I love that. The point I'm trying to make here is that we can't disregard from the smaller screen estate, and that some apps need to be designed for that in order to be really useful. Now, if the app gets too small and the control gets too small on that small screen, you can always solve it with Apple Pencils, external keyboards, mouse, and if you need more screen real estate, you can get an external screen. iOS 16 brings better screen support, so you can have apps being shown in full screen mode. And what the iPad turns into then is basically a desktop computer. And if that's what you're looking for, maybe it would be more intuitive to get this or this. Because what do you know it? Now you have access to desktop class software. But you will of course be sacrificing touch, and you will be adding a higher price tag, a much higher price tag to every piece of software that you buy. And I can understand how that can be a deal breaker, especially if you're used to the iOS app market pricing structure. Or maybe you don't have to, not if you get a MacBook Mini with an M1 processor, because that one supports iOS apps and, vice versa. But then developers have to opt in for that when they're making their apps, and many of them haven't. Why? Why is everything getting so messy all of a sudden? For me, at least, there are no clear-cut answers to any of these questions, which is why we have to discuss it in a reasonable, rational manner. I'm no expert at any of these topics, and in fact, I hate talking business. I really fucking hate it. I just want to focus on music. I'm just a Swedish bloke in a bedroom struggling with English, trying to make videos. I find stuff like this hilarious. This is who you're dealing with. Do you understand? Do you? Lastly, I have a message for the mobile music community, a community that I'm part of, that I love.
Calm down. Calm down. Calm down?
Let's keep our pants on, let's keep our piss in, and let's just wait and see what Ableton does. I am happy that they're here, because when it comes to clip-based sequencers on iOS, we really don't have that many choices, and so it's going to be interesting to see where Ableton takes this. And I'm sure that there will be a lot of development going into Note in the future. So yeah, let's just wait and see. I want to hear what your thoughts are. Give us your thoughts down there in the comment section. Just type it out. Anything regarding the topic. Do we even need desktop class apps on iOS? Do you think that the pricing structure is unfair? You know, anything. Just talk it out down there. I want to see what you have to say. Now, if you want to support the work I do here on the channel, give me a thumbs up. If you want to help support me in a financial way, go check out my Gumroad pages. I've got 2 preset packs out for sale, one for Timeless 3, which is an amazing app, and one for Trooper Synthesizer. And if you don't want to do that, you can become a patron. And for patrons, these preset packs are available with no extra charge, and that goes for any future preset packs I make. I think that's a pretty good deal. If you don't want to do that, I've got PayPal, and if you don't want to do that, you can check out my music. If you don't want to do any of it, that's fine too. As usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it. And go check out some proper Note reviews made by people who actually uses live, because they seem to love it.
I love it.
You cannot hide it all. I'll break that firewall. You tell me to stop, but I don't want to stop.
Warning.
I'm coming for you.